geographies have also altered, and water usage has also changed. Indus Water Commission was always there. They stopped meeting a long time back before April 25 with the Indus Commissioner. All these things could have been together in good faith by the researchers, by the scientists, should have been discussed to frame the broader parameters within which the climate change and all the other changes could fit in. And then the treaty had to, because this is a very gold standard treaty, how the treaty is to be modified or kind of addendum is to be attached with the treaty, that it is in the benefit of the people of both states. But that's not the good faith so far. I'm sure there are very empowered people from the government who are sitting here. I don't think so Pakistan has ever hesitated to talk about the treaty in good faith. But if that is the intention, so far that intention has not surfaced from the present government. It is unilateral actions that they have taken, starting not only from, because I said that it is a part of a wider construct. I'm repeating the same again. What happened on 5th of May 2019, unilaterally trying to change the status of Kashmir, although they can't do it because there are 3-4 parties, international community also part of the dispute, they can't do it. But they tried to do it. And they are supporting a lot of other actions against Pakistan which are very seriously harmful to the interests of Pakistan and the people of Pakistan, particularly in the form of proxies and others. In that set, what happened in May or April 2025, they went ahead with a military action against Pakistan, and on the very next day when this happened, Pahalgam happened, they announced the treaty to be held in abeyance, which clear, and there is no evidence of Pakistan's involvement in that kind of an action, Pahalgam and all. So it seems kind of preconceived actions to corner Pakistan, which obviously Pakistan is not going to do. So let's preserve the treaty first and then talk about what has materially changed in terms of climate and other things.
Thank you to our panellists and to our audience for taking part. I would now like to request the session chair for the second session, Ms. Hina Rabani Kar, to come and give your concluding remarks.
Thank you. Once again, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone, and let me acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. This is absolutely, so much has been said and in some ways also repeated in terms of what the Indus Water Treaty is, what's happening right now, what are the policy options for Pakistan, that I'm not going to try and repeat them. I'm just going to try and, perhaps in the next 7 minutes, try and look at why a country like India, which was perhaps of late, for the last many decades, vying for a seat in the Security Council, wanting to be the maker of rules in the world, in the remade world order, has decided to be the breaker of rules. What is the environment that is enabling a country to be able to get away with the stated objective of murdering, of killing a civilization, and not a peep, not a mutter, not a murmur, not a law-abiding international world coming to its defense? And, there's an adage that what you do to others will eventually happen to you. So if you're not there to protect when it happens to you, the precedent-setting role of what India is up to, not only in this, not only in what it calls holding in abeyance a treaty which, by the way of the treaty, cannot be held in abeyance, So before, without even going into what else is in play, or the only three issues that I want to bring your attention to, I'm going to start with reading Article 12 of the Indus Water Treaty, because sometimes I find that we keep on analyzing things without really going into how effective, or what do the treaties in their essence, or any treaty in its own essence actually says. So this I read many years back, and I was like, after this, which country which wants to still function in the world as not a rogue state, but as a country which deserves a seat, forget the Security Council, but even the General Assembly, would ever be able to think it can work itself out of a treaty like this? And Article 12 says, the provisions of this treaty may from time to time be modified by a duly ratified treaty concluding for that purpose between the two governments. And this kind of answers the question that was asked also over here, that should we renegotiate a treaty? You never renegotiate you don't end something before you have something better renegotiated. So right now, I think even to talk about anything like that would be, I think, a bit immature, if I could say that. And for the provision, I'm again quoting the Indus Water Treaty, the provisions of this treaty, this is interesting, all the provisions of this treaty as modified under the provisions of paragraph 3 shall continue in force until terminated by a duly ratified treaty concluded for that purpose between the two governments. So after this, if there are ifs, buts, abeyances, held in, suspension, any type of nomenclature, literature, fancy language, grammar, or any other language can be thought of, can be coughed up, can be vomited. But it doesn't change the fact that a country which goes against a treaty that it signed no less than by one of the founders of independent India, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Pakistan's president on the 19th of September 1960, that no country which wants to function in the world as a, forget law-abiding, as a reasonable country would ever think of doing that. So then, the question that comes to our mind is, how is India able to get away with it? It is because of the state of the world. It is because whatever you call it, whether you call it rupture, whether you call it reordering of the world, whether you call it a breakdown of the world order, whether you call it normalization of the impossible, but we all know that the architects of the previous order currently are no more the architects of the previous order, and as it was created, in some ways have not been able to hold the positions that made them the architects. And we also know that the architects of the new order are likely to not emerge from the architects of the previous order. So right now, everybody is in a flux. And there is no one who's here to preserve the international common goods, or what we call the global goods. Preserving treaties, abiding by international law, are common goods. Because today it is Pakistan's water, tomorrow it will be some other country's water. And I think from this very podium, it has been made abundantly clear by not one person but by many, and for, interestingly, people who represent different, if I may say, institutions of Pakistan, the politicians, the military, in every which way, that Pakistan, there's a reason that we ate grass. There's a very good reason that Pakistan had to eat grass. Not because Pakistan wanted to eat grass to be able to get its strategic security, but Pakistan was forced to eat grass to be able to build its strategic security. Why? Because the belligerent, roguish India had shown itself very, very early on. And this is coming from a person who expended a great deal of her time as foreign minister in trying to normalize relations with India, even at great political cost. We normalized trade relations with India because at that time the India on the other side was the Manmohan Singh India, it was the Nehru India, it was an India which liked to abide by law, it was an India which wanted to go towards peace, it was an India which felt it still existed in the geography of the region that it inhabited. And right now you have an India which believes it is outside of the realm of international law. It is not even breathing and eating in the geography of South Asia or the broader Middle East or whatever you call it. So it's a rogue state. It's a belligerent rogue state. And as far as India's international standing is concerned, I think I've already said it, so I'm not going to repeat it, but a rule making, a country which aspires to be sitting on the table of rule makers has to at least be rule abiding. And when it takes itself out, it is very clear as to where the brief for India's behavior is coming from. We know there's a country which is currently under trial for ICC and ICJ, and it has said that both institutions don't hold. We also know that there's a country, our neighbor, the belligerent neighbor that we have, which has been told by the Court of Arbitration that abeyance, there's no provision for unilateral abeyance. And guess what our neighbor says? It says the Court of Arbitration is not legal. It has no significance. So it's very interesting when you see it is also, as I've already said, become a denier of geography and a killer of civilization. But most importantly, I think what the world needs to wake up to, as they say famously, smell the coffee and wake up to, is that why is it that the Indus Water Treaty was considered to be a gold standard when it comes to water treaties between an upper riparian, middle riparian, lower riparians, between an upper and lower in the broader sense. Why was it considered a gold standard? Because it was durable, it was predictable, it had a water sharing arrangement which survived 3 wars. When it could survive a full-scale war, one war in which Pakistan even lost part of its, country, when it had the ability, it had the durability, the survival rate to be able to survive something like this, what is the Indus Water Treaty not able to survive today? It is the Modiization of in India, which used to be a very different animal. And I think if the world doesn't wake up to this, today it's Pakistan, yesterday it was probably other neighbors, and very soon it will be other countries which will be in its leash. And the last thing I want to say, because in my very, very sort of optimistic view of the world and my neighborhood, because I believe that, I was born in 1977, so I was the first foreign minister who was born after 1971, and I was like, we were done with this hostility, it's over. This is what we thought when we were dealing with India. And we thought at that moment that climate change is going to be one thing, make these countries forget their long-seated, violent past and animosity for each other, and be able to close these countries together in living a common future, in preserving the environment and the waters for the common future. And within that context, I think most of us do already know that amongst the most, when it comes to melting snow and ice, the Indus Basin is one of the most in challenge all over the world. So this tells you where we're going. It's not a pretty picture from what it's looking like where we are right now. And if this goes unmitigated and unstopped, then I think what we're doing is carving out the space for a continuous hegemonic country which has been shown its place in the battlefield, may I say, very clearly. But I think it is important for other countries to play their role. And here I'm going to specifically call out on the European countries who have always held themselves as the preservers of law, So with that, let me just congratulate once again all the panelists. They kept their time, and they were all very, very specific, and thank you all for your time.
Ms. Hina Ravani-Carr, thank you so much. Well, we have now reached the concluding session of today's seminar, and it is my profound privilege to invite our chief guest, the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, to the podium for his words of wisdom. Senator Mohammed Ishaq Dar has had a distinguished public career spanning several decades. Besides serving as the Foreign Minister, he has served multiple terms as Minister for Finance, represented Pakistan in major international financial and diplomatic forums, and played a leading role in advancing the country's foreign policy and international partnerships. Mr. Dar, if I can invite you to the stage.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasool al-Kareem. Honorable colleagues, distinguished ambassadors and UN representatives, learned scholars and policy experts, represent the international and national media. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. I wish to commend all the organizers of this seminar titled Indus Waters Treaty, an instrument of regional peace and security. I understand that throughout the day, leading experts from Pakistan and abroad have held meaningful discussions on one of the defining challenges of our times. Water transcends political boundaries, it sustains life, shapes civilizations, and its governance has profound implications for peace, security, and sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, water is not merely a natural resource. It is the foundation of human dignity, economic prosperity, food security, and environmental sustainability. Throughout history, great civilizations have flourished along rivers, and few river systems have shaped human history as profoundly as the Indus. For thousands of years, its waters have sustained communities, cultures, and one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the responsibility to preserve this shared heritage rests upon all of us. Transboundary rivers must bring nations closer through cooperation rather than divide them through confrontation. This principle is firmly embedded in international law and has guided water sharing arrangements across the globe. It was in this spirit that Pakistan and India concluded the Indus Water Treaty in 1960 under the auspices of the World Bank. The treaty established a durable and carefully negotiated framework governing the 6 rivers to India, 3 eastern rivers to India and 3 western rivers to Pakistan, while permitting India limited use in accordance with treaty provisions. India has benefited immensely from the water storage, irrigation, and hydroelectric infrastructure built on the eastern rivers. We also do not object to India's treaty-based use of the western rivers and seek to settle any differences or disputes within the framework provided in the Indus Water Treaty itself. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the treaty demanded significant adjustments from Pakistan as it had to fundamentally restructure its irrigation and water management systems in reliance upon the permanent legal framework. Despite being disadvantaged along the banks of our eastern rivers, where due to India's unrestricted use, these rivers dried up in Pakistan, but we honored the treaty commitments and obligations in letter and spirit. That investment reflected our confidence that international agreements, once concluded, would be honored in good faith. The treaty justified that confidence. For more than 6 decades, including periods of war and political tension, it provided predictability, transparency, and stability. It has rightly been regarded as one of the most successful examples of transboundary water cooperation anywhere in the world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is therefore deeply regrettable that this landmark treaty now faces its gravest challenge. India's unilateral decision to place the treaty in abeyance has no basis in the treaty itself or in the international law. Equally concerning has been the suspension of cooperation through the institutional mechanism that have been long served both countries under this treaty. Pakistan's position is very, very clear. We reject India's unilateral and illegal announcement. The Indus Waters Treaty remains valid, binding, and fully operative. No party can unilaterally suspend or terminate its obligations under a treaty that contains no such provision. This is not merely Pakistan's interpretation, it reflects the fundamental principle of international law that treaties must be performed in good faith. Our position has been vindicated by the ongoing proceedings before the Court of Arbitration constituted under the Indus Water Treaty. The Court of Arbitration has also affirmed that the Indus Water Treaty establishes a permanent legal regime governing the parties' rights and obligation over the Indus Basin. In doing so, it drew an analogy to boundary treaties, emphasizing the treaties creating stable territorial and resource allocation regimes are not susceptible or unilateral suspension or termination. If international agreements can be disregarded wherever they become politically inconvenient, confidence in the international legal order is inevitably weakened. The sanctity of the treaties is one of the foundations upon which peaceful relations among states are built. The implications extend well beyond South Asia. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, since April 2025, Pakistan has observed a pattern of actions that raises serious concern, including abrupt variations in the flows of Chenab and Jhelum rivers, and continued efforts to expand infrastructure capable of regulating waters allocated to Pakistan under the treaty. Such actions undermine the cooperative framework that has preserved regional stability for almost more than 6 decades. The recent supplementary award of the Court of Arbitration reaffirmed that the treaty imposes substantive legal limits on India's control over the western waters. This reinforces an essential principle. Disputes must be addressed through the mechanisms established by the treaty itself and not through unilateral actions and measures. Ladies and gentlemen, India's presence in the region has been witnessed by the world after the war, and this is most regrettable attitude as some of the speakers I heard since morning, and particularly what Hina Rabani Khar Sahiba wound up the second session. India's present course of conduct runs contrary to the fundamental rules governing treaty relations, including the Vienna Convention, as well as universally adopted principles of international law. Responsible nations respect international law and implement international treaties as a moral and legal obligation. We are convinced that bringing international commitments cannot be arbitrarily, conveniently, or unilaterally disregarded, manipulated, or terminated. This remains the core of international law and norms. Incidentally, Pakistan has 2 years elected member seat in the UN Security Council from 1st of January 2025 to 31st of December 2026. And countries in turn get its presidency. So did Pakistan last year in July. Which subject we chose for the material and for the ministerial discussion during our presidency, you will be happy to note multilateralism, peaceful settlement of disputes. This was Pakistan's subject, and it was dozens of countries took part. I personally went to preside that session, July 2025. So that shows Pakistan intent, Pakistan respect, and Pakistan's intentions about the respect for the international law and the treaties. Responsible nations respect international law and implement international treaties, as I said, as a moral and legal obligation. We are convinced that binding international commitments cannot be changed. We must be aware of the cost of derailing an international treaty on transboundary rivers, choosing confrontation by weaponizing shared waters and breaching international law and binding treaties. Such transgressions in international relations set dangerous precedents, dent national credibility, and challenge the foundations of interstate cooperation. Such actions erode the rules-based order which international peace and security rest. For Pakistan, this is not an abstract legal debate. Water is the lifeline of more than 250 million people, our nationals. Our agriculture, our security, energy production, and economic development depend upon the uninterrupted flow of the 3 western rivers to Pakistan. Protecting these waters is therefore a matter of vital national interest. Ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely advise India against sowing the seeds of war and jeopardizing the peace and security of our region. We must seek to promote peace in South Asia by addressing all outstanding issues. Pakistan has consistently sought to resolve differences through dialogue, diplomacy, and the treaty-based mechanisms agreed by both parties. We remain committed to these principles because lasting peace can only be built upon mutual respect, sovereign equality, and faithful implementation of international obligations. At the same time, there should be no misunderstanding. Any attempt to deprive Pakistan of the waters rightfully allocated to Pakistan under the Indus Water Treaty would have profound consequences for regional peace and security. Such actions serve neither country and would undermine the shared interest of nearly 2 billion people in the South Asia. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, South Asia faces enough shared challenges. Shared waters should become a source of cooperation, confidence, and regional integration, not coercion or confrontation. The Indus Water Treaty, signed over several decades ago and after several years of negotiations, was meant for best utilization of the available waters in the Indus Basin by both the countries, provided it is implemented in the spirit in which it was conceived, without being tapped in a zero-sum mentality. Pakistan remains steadfast in its commitment to peace, dialogue, and good neighborly relations. We seek neither confrontation nor conflict. We seek respect for international law, faithful implementation of treaty obligations, respect for each other's water rights, and cooperation that serves the interests of present and future generations. At the same time, we will not allow a rightful share of water resources to be misappropriated and will safeguard and defend our rights and interests under international law through all available means. You might recall that after the May 2025 war, and rather after Pahalgam incident, and after the announcement of India to hold the treaty in abeyance, there was a National Security Committee meeting in Pakistan, chaired by Prime Minister Muhammad Shahbaz Sharif. National Security Committee comprises of the civil and military leadership, and they were unanimous in declaring that any diversion, any interruption, and any reduction in the rights of Pakistan vis-a-vis Indus Water Treaty will be treated as an act of war. And we decided this, we mean it, and we will make sure that our rights are not prejudiced or abused. I can say Pakistan has demonstrated to be a very careful country which tried to contribute to bring peace and security in this region. I'm referring to the US-Iran conflict. Recently, you have all observed. Pakistan did its best to bring together on the negotiation table two parties which have never shook hands in the last 47 years. 10th and 11th of April this year, these two countries, we managed to convince that they sat on the same table, direct dialogue, after 47 years. Some countries like our neighbor used to call Pakistan a terrorist country. Pakistan is today known as peacemaker of the region in South Asia, alhamdulillah. This is the country which has been now in the recent Oslo forum. The US envoy said Pakistan has become the net security provider of this region. Pakistan believes in dignity, respect, no matter how small a country is or how big a country is, they're all equal in the foreign policy of Pakistan. We respect them all. The UN Security Council was created for what? For peace and security. And that peace and security is the main responsibility, which is being sabotaged by our neighbor through an act of, I would say, illegal declaration of treaty in abeyance. This is not on. It will never be acceptable. We have to work within the treaty mechanism. You just read from one of the speaker, Article 12 very clearly spells out that how this treaty can be changed, how this treaty can be, superseded. It is only by mutual consent. And there's a mechanism, there are three-tier mechanism in the treaty itself, how to resolve the disputes. So, one-sided, any action by our neighbor, they would be making a mistake. They did make a mistake last year. The Pahalgam incident, Pakistan had nothing to do with it. Within hours, Pakistan Prime Minister Muhammad Shahbaz Sharif made an open offer. And the international community is very well witness to that offer, that we are ready to undergo and agree to any international investigation of the Pahalgam incident, which actually led to their declaration of treaty in abeyance. Could it be like earlier similar incidents in India, which led to 5th of August 2019 by declaring Jammu and Kashmir as part of India, by all of a sudden changing its constitution? So please don't play these mistakes and don't play these dramas. I think we should live like good neighbors. My parliamentary colleague just shared with you, Pakistan has made in the past number of attempts. Obviously, Hina Ruwani Khar Sahiba belongs to People's Party, and earlier she has been a part of Musharraf government. So, we in all sincerity are ready to talk on all issues, what we call composite dialogues, but it takes two to tango. It's not that Pakistan would like to do something and the other side would not take it. They become so narrow-minded that even the sports are not subjected to this Hindutva, philosophy. See the recent elections in Bihar. What happened? 40 million people were disenfranchised and they were deprived to vote. So you see, that is their, internal matters, but I think the world community must take notice of it. It is certainly not desirable. This region houses over 2 billion human beings, and we are all bound by the UN. Though that institution was created for such purposes, the UN Security Council main mandate is security and peace. So this is a clear subject which the global community must impress upon in order to have peace in the region. So in conclusion, the Indus Water Treaty is not merely, as I said, a water sharing arrangement, but a vital instrument of regional peace, stability and cooperation. Let us reaffirm that shared waters must never be weaponized. They must remain a bridge between nations, guided by cooperation, dialogue and respect for international law, for the benefit of the present and future generations. I thank you all.
उन्होंने कहा कि आलमी कानून और मुआहिदों की खिलाफ वर्जी की जाए तो नताइज सिर्फ 2 मुल्कों तक महदूद नहीं रहते। दरियाओं से मुतल्लिक आलमी मुआहिदे को कमज़ोर या सबोताज करने की भारी कीमत चुकानी पड़ सकती है। पाकिस्तान आलमी कवानीन और सफारती ज़राए से अपने हुकूक और मफादात का तहफ़्फ़ुज़ करेगा। पाकिस्तान अपने जायज़ आबी वसाइल पर किसी किस्म का गैर कानूनी कब्ज़ा या तजावुज़ कबूल नहीं करेगा।
He continues to promote informed dialogue, rigorous research and constructive policy discourse on issues of regional and global importance. Ambassador Johar Salim, the floor is yours.
इस्लामाबाद में सेंतास मुआहदे पर बैनुल-अक़वामी सेमिनार इस वक्त जारी है। अब से कुछ देर पहले नायब वज़ीर आज़म इसहाक़ डार खिताब कर रहे थे। उन्होंने कहा कि पाकिस्तान अपने जायज़ आबी वसाइल पर किसी किस्म का गैर कानूनी कब्ज़ा या तजावुज़ हरगिज़ कबूल नहीं करेगा। ज़राअत, ग़िज़ाई तहफ़्फ़ुज़, तवानाई और मुआशी तरक्की का इन्हिसार 3 मग़रबी दरियाओं के बहाव पर है।
This watershed seminar, it is my singular privilege on behalf of the Institute of Regional Studies and the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting to express our profound appreciation to all those whose wisdom, scholarship and commitment have made today's deliberations both enlightening and consequential. Our discourse today has been greatly enriched by the gracious presence of the Deputy Prime Minister. A participation that reflected the paramount importance Pakistan attaches to safeguarding its water security while steadfastly upholding international law and promoting regional peace. Sir, your thoughtful address has provided a fitting finale to today's deliberations. Our profound appreciation is equally due to Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, whose eloquent address reaffirmed the enduring significance of the Indus Waters Treaty as a cornerstone of regional stability and a testament to the importance of honoring international commitments. My sincere thanks also go to our distinguished session chairs, my dear friend Khurram Dastagir Saab, whose brilliant exposés I always enjoy very much, and Ms. Hina Robani Kar, whose able students. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been privileged today to hear an exceptional panel of speakers. Sayyid Meher Ali Shah adequately examined the treaty's legal architecture and the indispensable role of the Permanent Indus Commission. My dear friend Ahmed Bilal Sufi cogently reaffirmed the treaty's firm foundations in international law. Joining us from Moscow, Dr. Roxolana Zigon shared valuable international perspectives on peace, regional stability, and humanitarian security. My dear friend Musaddiq Malik compellingly highlighted the close relationship between water security, climate resilience, and sustainable development. From Beijing, Dr. Victor Gao insightfully reflected upon the treaty's stabilizing influence in one of the world's most strategically significant regions. Lieutenant General Amir Riaz vividly portrayed the grave consequences of the weaponization of water. Lastly, Ms. Laurie Watkins placed today's deliberations within the broader framework of international river governance and demonstrated how enduring institutions help prevent conflict and foster cooperation. I also wish to acknowledge with great appreciation the presence of all esteemed cabinet members, especially the Defense Minister who was earlier here today, parliamentarians, heads of diplomatic missions, and members of the diplomatic corps, as well as senior government officials, distinguished scholars, and academics representing civil society and our research community. My thanks also to the members of the media and all other participants whose engagement greatly enriched this seminar. Finally, I express my sincere appreciation to the dedicated teams of the Institute of Regional Studies and the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting under the dynamic leadership of Federal Minister for Information, Ataullah Tarer. These teams made today's event possible and a resounding success. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have done more than discuss a treaty. We have reaffirmed a principle that the enduring peace is best secured through respect for international law, fidelity to solemn commitments, and institutions that enable nations to resolve their differences peacefully. Throughout today's deliberations, one conclusion emerged with unmistakable clarity. The Indus Waters Treaty is more than a water sharing arrangement. It is one of the world's most enduring examples of how law, dialogue, and institutions can transform competing interests into peaceful cooperation. Our discussions also reaffirmed that the Indus Basin lies at the heart of Pakistan's water, food, energy, and economic security. The uninterrupted flow of the western rivers is therefore not merely an economic necessity. It is an existential national interest. We have also been reminded that lasting water security depends not on the volume of water, but equally on certainty, transparency, predictability, and cooperation. The path forward is therefore very clear, as is the message which emerged from this August gathering today, loud and clear. And Indian leadership must take note, honor the treaty in letter and spirit, exchange information openly and in a timely manner, resolve any differences through the institutions and mechanisms established by the treaty, ensure that every project fully complies with the treaty's legal and technical requirements. These are not unreasonable expectations. They're simply the obligations that the parties themselves freely accepted under one of the world's longest standing and most respected international water sharing agreements. And water is not merely a strategic resource. It is the source of life itself, as the Holy Quran reminds us. And we made from water every living thing. Its stewardship therefore demands wisdom, restraint, and a shared sense of responsibility. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, permit me to conclude with Shakespeare's timeless words from The Tempest. The rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance. Few words better capture the enduring lesson of today's deliberations. May wisdom continue to guide our choices. May the rule of law continue to strengthen peace. And may the waters of the Indus continue to flow as a source of life, cooperation, and hope. For treaties do more than regulate rivers. They build trust, and most of all, they shape the future. I thank you all. Pakistan Zindabad.
इस्लामाबाद में सिंतास मुआहिदे पर बैनुल-अक़वामी सेमिनार जारी है और साबिक़ सफ़ीर जौहर सलीम खिताब कर रहे थे। उन्होंने कहा कि सिंतास मुआहिदा दो तरफ़ा नहीं बल्कि आलमी नौइयत का मामला है। तमाम मुकर्रिरीन ने सिंतास मुआहिदे पर सिर हासिल गुफ्तगू की। सिंतास मुआहिदे के बारे कानूनी पहलुओं का जायज़ा लेने के लिए सेमिनार का इनेकाद खुश आइंद है। اور انہوں نے مزید کہا کہ تمام مقررین نے سنتاس معاہدے پر سر حاصل گفتگو کی ہے اور یہ معاہدہ اپنی شکل میں ہی موجود رہنا چاہیے، اور انہوں نے مزید کہا کہ سنتاس معاہدے کے بارے قانونی پہلوؤں کا جائزہ لینے کے لیے سیمینار کا انعقاد خوش آئند ہے۔ اسی پر بات کرنے کے لیے ہمارے ساتھ ماہر آبی امور بشارت حسن صاحب موجود ہیں۔ بشارت صاحب، بہت شکریہ آپ کے قیمتی وقت کا۔ جس طرح سے آپ سے تھوڑی دیر پہلے سابق سفیر نے بھی کہا، اس وقت اسلام آباد میں سنتاس معاہدے پر بین الاقوامی سیمینار جاری ہے، کیا کہیں گے، کس حد تک خوش آئند ہے یہ؟
دیکھیں، خوش آئند تو ہے، لیکن یہ ہے کہ اب آپ انڈیا کو کس طریقے سے منواتے ہیں، مودی کو کس طریقے سے آپ یہ سمجھاتے ہیں کہ جو کچھ تم کر رہے ہو یہ بین الاقوامی قوانین کی خلاف ورزی ہے۔ پاکستان ایک لوور ریپیرین کنٹری ہے اور ایک معاہدے کے تحت جو کہ جس کا ثالث ورلڈ بینک تھا، 1960 کا معاہدہ تھا، اس کے تحت 3 دریا جو ہیں وہ انڈیا کو دیے گئے اور 3 دریا جو ہیں پاکستان کو دیے گئے۔ اب یہ جو پاکستان کو دریا دیے گئے، اس پر انڈیا کو اجازت نہیں ہے کہ وہ کوئی ڈیم بنائے اور اس پانی کو روکے۔ ہاں، وہ رن اپ ریور ٹائپ پروجیکٹس جو ہیں وہ انرجی جنریشن کے لیے استعمال کر سکتا ہے، لیکن چونکہ انڈیا کے جو ہے پرائم منسٹر مودی نے اور ان کے RSS کے بی جے پی کے دوسرے لیڈرز نے یہ کہا ہے کہ ہم پاکستان کو ایک ایک بوند پانی کے لیے جو ہے وہ ترسا دیں گے، اور نہ کہ انہوں نے ان 3 دریاؤں پر جو کہ انڈیا کے حصے میں آئے تھے اس پر ڈیمز بنانے شروع کیے، اس کا پانی ڈائیورٹ کرنا شروع کیا انڈیا کے اپنے علاقے میں اریگیشن کے لیے، بلکہ اس نے یہاں تک کیا ہے کہ افغانستان میں بھی بڑے ڈیمز جو ہیں اس میں سرمایہ کاری کی ہے، اور جو کابل ریور ہے اس کا پانی جہاں سے آتا ہے اس کو اپ سٹریم روکنے کے لیے وہ انڈیا سرمایہ کاری کر رہا ہے، بڑا ڈیم بنا رہا ہے۔ تو اس طریقے سے بالکل پاکستان کا پانی ہر طرف سے روکا جا رہا ہے، اور یہ بالکل اس کی خلاف ورزی ہے جو سنتاس کا معاہدہ ہے، اور پاکستان اس معاملے کو انٹرنیشنل کورٹ آف آربیٹریشن میں لے گیا تھا، جہاں پر پاکستان کے حق میں فیصلہ آیا ہے۔ انڈیا نے اس کا بائیکاٹ کیا تھا، لیکن اس کے بائیکاٹ کا کوئی فائدہ اس لیے اس کو نہیں ہوگا کہ جو عالمی قوانین ہیں ان کی خلاف ورزی نہیں کی جا سکتی، جو لوور ریپیرین کنٹریز ہیں ان کا پانی نہیں روکا جا سکتا، کیونکہ اگر انڈیا اس طریقے سے پانی پاکستان کا روکے گا تو پھر تو بہت سارے ملک جو ہیں وہ یہ کام کر سکتے ہیں، اور ان کے لوور ریپیرین جتنے بھی کنٹریز ہیں وہ تو اسی طریقے سے وہاں پر قحط پڑ جائے گا، تو یہ کام نہیں ہو سکتا۔ دوسرے پاکستان کی حکومت نے ایک بڑا سخت موقف اپنایا ہے کہ اگر اس طریقے سے کیا گیا تو پاکستان اس کا پھر قرار واقعی جواب بھی دے گا اور اس کو ایکٹ آف وار سمجھا جائے گا۔ میرا خیال بالکل صحیح ہے۔ اب تو یہی ہے کہ عالمی قوانین کی خلاف ورزی، سنتاس معاہدے کی خلاف ورزی کی گئی ہے انڈیا کی طرف سے، اس کے اوپر جو ہے پینلٹیز لگنی چاہیے، فوری طور پہ پاکستان کا جو پانی ہے، جو 3 دریا پاکستان کے حصے آئے ہیں ان کا پانی کھولنا چاہیے، ان کا پانی پاکستان کو دینا چاہیے۔ لیکن ایک اور چیز جو انڈیا کرتا ہے وہ یہ کہ باقی سارا سال تو پانی روکے رکھتا ہے، لیکن جب مانسون سیزن آتا ہے، جب کہ بہت زیادہ بارشیں ہوتی ہیں، پاکستان میں بھی بہت بارشیں ہوتی ہیں اور پاکستان میں پہلے ہی سیلاب آ رہا ہوتا ہے، ادھر سے گلیشیئر بھی پگھل رہے ہوتے ہیں جن کا پانی پاکستان کے دریاؤں میں آ رہا ہوتا ہے، تو اس وقت انڈیا اپنا پانی بھی چھوڑ دیتا ہے پاکستان کے جو 3 دریا ہیں ان میں، تاکہ پاکستان میں فلڈز آئیں اور تباہی ہو اور یہاں کی جو کھڑی فصلیں ہیں وہ تباہ ہو جائیں۔ تو یہ ایک باقاعدہ آبی دہشت گردی میں اس کو کہوں گا جس پر عمل پیرا ہے مودی حکومت، اس پر عمل پیرا ہے، اس کو روکنا ہوگا، اس آبی جارحیت کو روکنا ہوگا، اور یہ عالمی قوانین کی سراسر خلاف ورزی ہے، اور میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ اس طریقے سے ایک بڑے ملک جو کہ پاکستان ہے، نیوکلیئر طاقت ہے۔
اچھا بشارت صاحب، یقیناً اس طرح کے سیمینار جو ہے وہ بہت ہی، میں آپ سے کوئک سے ٹیک جاننا چاہوں گا کہ خوش آئند ہے، لیکن جس طرح سے نائب وزیر اعظم اسحاق ڈار نے بھی کہا کہ جنوبی ایشیا کو پہلے ہی بے شمار چیلنجز کا سامنا ہے اور پانی ہماری لائف لائن نہیں ہے، ریڈ لائن بھی ہے، تو اس طرح کے ان سیمینارز کے علاوہ اور کون کون سے آپشن یوز کیے جاتے ہیں سر؟
دیکھیے، ان سیمینارز کا مقصد ہوتا ہے اویئرنیس پیدا کرنا، اس میں جو ہے بین الاقوامی جو ہے وہ مبصر بھی آتے ہیں، اس میں تمام آپ کے جو ایمبیسڈرز ہیں وہ بھی آتے ہیں، اس میں باہر کے جو جرنلسٹ ہیں ان کو بھی انوائٹ کیا جاتا ہے۔ اس کا مقصد ہے اویئرنیس پیدا کرنا، پوری دنیا کو بتانا کس طریقے سے انڈیا جو ہے اس وقت آبی جارحیت کر رہا ہے۔
اویئرنیس سب بہت ضروری ہے اور اسی وجہ سے اس طرح کے سیمینارز کا انعقاد کیا جاتا ہے، اور یقیناً یہ خوش آئند ہے۔ ہمارے ساتھ بشار صاحب موجود تھے، آپ کے قیمتی وقت کا بہت شکریہ۔ वापस आएंगे एक ब्रेक के बाद, हमारे साथ रहिएगा।
कराची शहर नहीं तो एक जज्बा है। जब कराची का एक जायका नहीं तो एक बिरयानी काफी कैसे? ये शहर हमारा है तो जियो शान से कराची। कराची में 10 में से 9 लोगों का इंतखाब। शान